This video could be the most important 25 minutes you spend this year. Here's why when death approaches, families often panic. They call 911, rush to emergency rooms, and subject their loved ones to aggressive treatments that do nothing but prolong suffering. But when you know these 7 signs, you'll recognize that what's happening is natural, normal, and often peaceful. You'll be able to make informed decisions about care, comfort, and saying goodbye. The call came at 2:47 a.m. It always does. After 3 decades as a hospice nurse, I've learned that death rarely keeps business hours. But this call was different. It was from Sarah, a 64-year-old daughter, who'd been caring for her 89-year-old mother, Helen. "Margaret," Sarah whispered into the phone, "I think something's happening. Mom's acting strange. She's been sleeping for 2 days straight, barely eating, and when she does wake up, she seems different. Is this normal?" I could hear the fear in Sarah's voice. It's the same fear I've heard thousands of times before. Swara, the fear that comes from not knowing what to expect during life's final chapter. But here's what I told Sarah, and what I want to tell you today. What she was seeing wasn't strange at all. It was actually one of the most predictable patterns in end-of-life care. You see, after sitting beside more than 3,000 people during their final days, I've learned that death isn't random or chaotic. It follows patterns. There are signs, 7 specific signs, that almost always appear before someone passes away. These aren't medical textbook theories. These are real, observable changes that happen so consistently that experienced hospice nurses can often predict when someone has days rather than weeks left to live. Now, I want to be absolutely clear about something before we continue. This information isn't meant to frighten you or make you feel helpless. Quite the opposite. When you understand these signs, you gain something invaluable. The ability to recognize what's happening, to prepare emotionally, and to ensure your loved one receives the comfort and dignity they deserve during their final journey. If you're over 60, statistically speaking, you've likely already experienced the loss of someone close to you. Maybe it was a parent, a spouse, a sibling, or a dear friend. And if you're like most people, you probably felt unprepared. You might have wondered if they were in pain, if there was something more you could have done, or if the signs you were seeing were normal. This video will answer those questions. But more importantly, it will prepare you for what lies ahead. Whether you're caring for someone now or thinking about your own mortality, because here's the truth that most people don't want to acknowledge. We're all going to die. It's not morbid to prepare for it. It's merciful. The 7 signs I'm about to share with you are based on decades of observation, thousands of cases, and the quiet wisdom that comes from witnessing life's most sacred transition over and over again. Some of these signs might surprise you. Others might bring you comfort. But all of them will give you the knowledge you need to face end-of-life situations with confidence rather than fear. The first sign hospice nurses learn to recognize is something we call the Great Withdrawal. It doesn't happen overnight. Instead, it unfolds gradually, like a dimmer switch being slowly turned down, rather than a light being suddenly switched off. Helen, the 89-year-old mother I mentioned earlier, demonstrated this perfectly. According to her daughter Sarah, Helen had always been the family's social butterfly. She loved phone calls, enjoyed visits from neighbors, and never missed her weekly bridge game. But 3 weeks before she died, all of that changed. She started sleeping 14, sometimes 16 hours a day, Sarah told me. When she was awake, she'd just lie there with her eyes closed. She stopped answering the phone. When her bridge friends came to visit, she'd smile politely, but barely say a word. I thought she was depressed, but Helen wasn't depressed. She was preparing. One of the most noticeable changes in the final weeks of life is the dramatic increase in sleep. While healthy adults typically sleep 7-9 hours per night, people in their final weeks often sleep 22 hours out of every 24. This isn't laziness or depression. It's the body's wise response to what's happening internally. From a physiological standpoint, the body is working incredibly hard. During the dying process, major organs are slowly shutting down, cellular processes are slowing, and the brain is beginning to reduce non-essential activities. Sleep becomes the body's way of conserving energy for this monumental task. Dr. James Peterson, a geriatrician I've worked with for over 15 years, explains it this way. Think of it like a smartphone battery that's running low. The phone automatically goes into power-saving mode, shutting down non-essential apps and reducing screen brightness. The human body does something similar. Sleep is our power-saving mode. But it's not just about sleep. People approaching death often begin to withdraw from social interactions. even with family members they love deeply. This can be heartbreaking for families who interpret it as rejection or giving up. I remember Robert, a 78-year-old retired teacher who had been married to his wife Janet for 52 years. In his final month, Robert stopped, wanting to watch their favorite TV shows together. He'd asked Janet to turn off the radio when she was cooking. He declined visits from his grandchildren, something that had previously brought him immense joy. I felt like he was shutting me out, Janet told me through tears, like he didn't want me around anymore. But that wasn't it at all. Robert was turning inward, beginning a process that psychologists call life review, a deep internal examination of his life, relationships, and experiences. This introspective process requires enormous mental energy and often needs to happen in silence and solitude. When people in their final weeks do engage in conversation, the topics often shift dramatically. Instead of discussing current events, daily activities, or future plans, they might talk about people who have already died, childhood memories, or spiritual concerns. Margaret, an 82-year-old former librarian, spent her final weeks talking almost exclusively about her mother, who had died 20 years earlier. "She's waiting for me," Margaret would say with absolute certainty. "I can feel her presence." These conversations aren't signs of confusion or dementia, though those conditions can certainly complicate end-of-life care. Instead, they're indications that the person is beginning to mentally and emotionally prepare for death. If you're caring for someone showing these signs, your natural instinct might be to fight against them. You might try to keep your loved one engaged, encourage them to stay active, or worry that they're giving up. But understanding this withdrawal as a natural part of the dying process can help you respond with support rather than frustration. The most loving thing you can do during this phase is to respect their need for quiet and solitude while still maintaining your presence. Sit beside them, even if they're sleeping. Hold their hand without expecting conversation. Create a peaceful environment with soft lighting and minimal noise. The human body is remarkably intelligent. Long before the conscious mind fully accepts that death is approaching, the body begins making adjustments, subtle but significant changes that signal the beginning of the final transition. As a hospice nurse, I've learned to read these physical signs like a language. And today, I want to teach you that language too. One of the most distressing changes for families is when their loved one stops eating. Food is love in most cultures, and when someone refuses meals, it can feel like they're rejecting our care. But this loss of appetite serves a crucial biological purpose. Dr. Sarah Williams, a palliative care physician, explains when the body is preparing for death, digestion becomes increasingly difficult and unnecessary. The stomach shrinks, digestive enzymes decrease, and the body simply doesn't need the same fuel it once did. I've seen families become almost frantic about getting their dying loved one to eat. They'll offer favorite foods, try liquid supplements, or even consider feeding tubes. But here's what I always tell them. Forcing food on someone who's dying can actually cause more discomfort than comfort. Emma, a 91-year-old grandmother, hadn't eaten a full meal in over a week. Her family was devastated. "She loves my apple pie," her daughter-in-law kept saying. "She's never refused my apple pie before." But when Emma finally did take a small bite, she smiled and whispered, "It's perfect, dear. Save the rest for the family." As circulation slows, the skin undergoes noticeable changes. You might observe a bluish or purplish discoloration around the fingernails, lips, or extremities. This is called cyanosis, and while it can look alarming, it's typically not painful. The skin may also become mottled, developing a patchy, uneven coloration that looks almost like marble. This usually appears first on the hands and feet, then gradually moves up the arms and legs. These changes happen because the heart is no longer pumping blood as efficiently to the extremities. Temperature regulation also becomes difficult. Someone might feel cold to the touch even when covered with blankets. Or they might kick off covers because they feel too warm. Their hands and feet might be cool while their forehead feels feverish. Perhaps the most noticeable physical change is in breathing patterns. Normal breathing is regular and unconscious. But as death approaches, breathing becomes more variable and conscious effort may be required. You might notice longer pauses between breaths, followed by several quick, shallow breaths. This pattern, called Cheney-Stokes breathing, can be startling to witness, but is completely normal. The pauses can last 10-30 seconds, and family members often find themselves holding their own breath during these silent moments. Another common change is what medical professionals call death rattle, a wet gurgling sound that occurs when saliva and mucus collect in the throat and upper airways. This happens because the person no longer has the reflex or energy to clear their throat. While it sounds distressing, hospice nurses want families to know that the person is usually not aware of the sound and is not suffering because of it. As the body's systems slow down, bladder and bowel function change significantly. Urine output often decreases dramatically, and what is produced might be dark and concentrated. Bowel movements may become infrequent or stop entirely. These changes can be managed with proper care. Catheter insertion if needed, adult diapers for comfort and gentle cleansing. The key is maintaining dignity while keeping the person comfortable. The boundary between sleep and wakefulness becomes increasingly blurred. Someone might appear to be sleeping, but suddenly open their eyes and make a comment about something no one else can see. They might reach toward the ceiling or have conversations with people who aren't there. These experiences, often called deathbed visions, are reported by hospice workers worldwide. While we don't fully understand the neurological mechanisms behind them, they're so common that they're considered a normal part of the dying process. Paradoxically, some people become more restless as death approaches. They might try to get out of bed, pick at their clothes or bed sheets, or seem agitated despite being very weak. This restlessness, sometimes called terminal restlessness, can be managed with gentle reorientation, soft music, or light medication if needed. I remember George, an 85-year-old veteran, who spent his final days repeatedly trying to get ready for formation. His military training was so deeply ingrained that even in his final hours, he felt the need to report for duty. His family found comfort in understanding that this wasn't confusion. It was George being George right to the end. All of these physical changes point to one crucial truth. The focus during this time should be on comfort, not cure. Simple measures like repositioning every few hours, keeping the mouth moist with ice chips or lip balm, and ensuring the room temperature is comfortable can make an enormous difference. If you're still with me, I want you to know that recognizing these physical signs doesn't mean you're giving up hope. It means you're giving the gift of appropriate care. After 3 decades of hospice nursing, I've observed that dying isn't just a physical process. It's an emotional and spiritual journey that often surprises families with its depth and beauty. The emotional changes that occur in the final weeks and days of life are as predictable as the physical ones, yet they're often misunderstood or overlooked entirely. One of the most profound emotional shifts I witness is what I call the Great Reconciliation. People approaching death often feel an urgent need to resolve old conflicts, express long-held feelings, or make peace with past decisions. I'll never forget Patricia, a 77-year-old former teacher, who hadn't spoken to her sister in over 15 years due to a bitter inheritance dispute. 3 weeks before Patricia died, she asked her daughter to call her sister. "I don't want to take this anger with me," Patricia said. "Life's too short for grudges." The phone call lasted 3 hours. Both sisters cried, apologized, and expressed their love for each other. Patricia's sister flew across the country to be with her during her final days. It was one of the most beautiful reconciliations I've ever witnessed. This drive for reconciliation seems to be hardwired into the human experience of dying. It's as if the approaching end of life gives people permission to prioritize what truly matters: love, forgiveness, and connection over pride, anger, or past hurts. Another striking change is how people begin to detach from material possessions and worldly concerns. Someone who was once worried about their investment portfolio might stop asking about the stock market entirely. A person who was meticulous about their appearance might no longer care about how they look. This isn't depression or giving up. It's a natural shifting of priorities. When death approaches, people often gain remarkable clarity about what truly matters. They want to spend their remaining energy on relationships, spiritual concerns, and emotional closure rather than material or practical matters. Robert, an 81-year-old businessman who had built a successful company from nothing, spent his final weeks giving away his possessions. He insisted on personally handing over his prized golf clubs to his grandson, his vintage car to his nephew, and his wife's jewelry to his daughters. Perhaps the most mysterious aspect of dying is the spiritual awakening that many experience. Even people who weren't particularly religious during their lives often begin talking about God, heaven, or the afterlife in their final weeks. These spiritual experiences can take many forms: visions of deceased relatives or friends, conversations with spiritual beings, profound sense of peace and acceptance, mystical experiences of light or love, clarity about life's meaning and purpose. Dr. Michael Chen, a psychiatrist who specializes in end-of-life care, explains, "We're seeing something that transcends traditional medical understanding." These experiences are so common and so consistent across cultures that they suggest something profound is happening beyond just brain chemistry changes. One of the most documented spiritual experiences is what researchers call deathbed visions. Studies suggest that 60–80% of people who die naturally experience some form of vision or spiritual encounter in their final days. These visions typically involve deceased family members or friends coming to visit, religious figures or spiritual guides, beautiful landscapes or celestial imagery, feelings of being called or invited to come home. Sometimes people hold on because they feel their family isn't ready to let them go. Giving explicit permission, saying it's okay to go, can be a profound gift. Reassuring them that they will be remembered and that their love will live on can provide deep comfort. Whether through prayer, religious rituals, or simply acknowledging their spiritual experiences, respecting their spiritual needs is crucial. Sometimes the most meaningful support is simply being there, holding their hand and sharing silent love. One of the most difficult aspects for families is understanding that letting go emotionally doesn't mean loving less. It means loving enough to allow natural death to occur. This emotional shift often mirrors what the dying person is experiencing internally. In these cases, the dying person may linger longer, as if waiting for that final person to give permission. If you're caring for someone who is dying, prepare yourself for the emotional intensity of this journey. You might experience overwhelming sadness mixed with profound gratitude, moments of spiritual awe, deep conversations about life and death, powerful dreams or spiritual experiences yourself, a sense of witnessing something sacred. Here's what I want you to remember most. Death is not failure. It's not something to fight against at all costs. When these 7 signs appear, they're telling you that the body is doing what it was designed to do, transitioning peacefully from life to death. Your role isn't to prevent death when it's natural and inevitable. Your role is to ensure comfort, dignity, and love during the final journey. I want you to know that knowledge like this can change everything. It can transform fear into peace, panic into preparation, and helplessness into meaningful action. I've shared this information with you because I believe every family deserves to face end-of-life situations with confidence rather than confusion. You now have tools that can help you provide better care, make more informed decisions, and create more peaceful final moments for the people you love. Please do me a favor. If this video brought you peace, clarity, or helpful information, hit that like button. Your engagement helps this important information reach other families who desperately need it. And if you know someone who's currently caring for an elderly loved one, please share this video with them. It might be exactly what they need to hear right now. Subscribe to our channel if you want more content, specifically designed for seniors and their families. We talk about the topics that matter most to people over 60: health, family, aging with dignity, and preparing for life's final chapters. And here's my challenge to you: have the conversation. Talk to your family about end-of-life wishes. Share what you've learned today. Create your comfort care plan. Don't wait until a crisis forces these discussions. In the comments below, I'd love to hear from you. Have you experienced these signs with a loved one? Did this information help you understand something that happened in your family? Your stories could bring comfort to someone else who's going through this journey right now. Remember, preparing for death isn't morbid. It's one of the most loving things you can do for yourself and your family. Thank you for staying with me through this important conversation. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. See you in the next video. Goodbye for now.